Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
The two major things. One is about API development. This one stream okay. This contains API design. What is the best practices in API designing and Ramble API? How to manage the API, how to share your API. So that's the API segment. And the second thing you told right about API development. API development itself, but it's API implementation. This is design. Sorry, this is not. It is design, not a development. This is design and this is implementation or a development. So these three areas, we need to focus these two areas. First thing is API design and API implementation. Nice, I like that. So yeah, Allah can simplify stuff nice. Excellent, excellent. So API design and development design thing we do in a component called Anypoint Design Center. I hope you already registered with Anypoint platform. You might have seen Anypoint Design Center also, am I right? Anytime it's a design center, right? Yep, I do have that already. So when you get into the MuleSoft project, the first thing the project may want to ask you to see the design. How for a specific business requirement? How is the API design? Is the design? What are operations inside the API? How you design the API using RAM and that stuff. So you need to focus on designing the API using RAM. What are different resources? What are the how to design query parameters, URI parameters, all the stuff you see in the design part. Yeah. Okay. In today's session, my roadmap is I want to cover a little bit about design and a little bit about implementation. So you will get an overall picture of the API design implementation, and you need it to drill down into those concepts and come up with the questions in the next session, right? Excellent. In the regarding API implementation, you need to know how the messages got processed in the Mole. So what's this API you designed in the design center, and the same API you are going to implement in Anypoint Studio. Anypoint Studio is the ID, where it has complete infrastructure, means it has connectors loaded with connectors, transformers, all the stuff. Using those components, you can able to implement your API, whatever the API design, right? So while you are implementing that API, you need to have an idea about how the API receives the messages. In what way it receives the messages and how it processes the message. Okay, from the postman. You said from the postman. I send a message to a Hello World application you develop. Write in Anypoint Studio Hello World application. And this application processes the message received from the postman, right? But underlying there are something all this, how the message received from postman to your Mule application. in what format the message received the Mule application, and how this Mule Hello World Mule application process that message. What internals of that message, that thing you need to know, right? These two parts. First part is about the design and second part is about the implementation. Right. So I will come from implementation design. Just first discuss a little bit about implementation and I'll come to design. Alright. So let me share one of my slides about implementation. So to understand the basics of the means of implementation. You need to understand what is the role of the MuleSoft, integration. So, MuleSoft is an integration which is connecting multiple systems and multiple applications, right? That's right. So, you can treat MuleSoft as a broker, right? This middleman sitting in the middle of so many applications, a broker, right? So, when you are working as a middleman between applications, you will get different kinds of messages. Means you will work as a broker between different kinds of application messages. That's right. So what I meant is you might be this. You means you are calling as a MuleSoft integration as you might have okay. MuleSoft integration, MuleSoft ESV or integration, or this guy is sitting between applications. Okay, this one. So this guy have chance to receive messages from HTTP client. HTTP client means it might be a browser. It might be a postman kind of thing. It might be an application you developed using HTTP components, right? So it will get messages from HTTP clients. And it will get messages from the messaging clients. Messaging clients, right? Atomons, private and type MQ, Anypoint, MeQ, these are called messaging clients, right? Right. The MuleSoft may receive messages from the messaging clients. MuleSoft can receive messages from the databases. Means these are all sources. We call as a source. From where MuleSoft is getting messages. What is source systems, right? So from databases. MuleSoft might be readings from the database tables and getting messages. Right. Yeah. Or there are some FTP server is there. Somebody puts file in the FTP server. Some different application put the file in the FTP server. And MuleSoft receiving messages from the FTP server. We're receiving files from the FTP server. Right. So, likewise, so many source systems are CRM, so many source systems are there. MuleSoft will be receiving messages from these different kinds of systems, not in one single system, right? So, again, is this also what they also call a connectors? Yes. They're same, right? Sources and connectors. MuleSoft has different connectors. HTTP connector is available. So that HTTP connector talk to HTTP client. And JMS's connector is available. That JMS connector talk to a specific JMS client. DB connector is available. So MuleSoft has all connectors packed inside to want to talk to the different systems. MuleSoft use that kind of connector, so there is some framework. You can develop your own custom component. And you can be able to connect that one. But most of the time, you won't get that kind of requirement is very minimal. But in case if you get such requirement, you need to develop your own connector. And that's doable in the tool. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Now the fundamental here you need to focus is UR. MuleSoft is receiving different kinds of messages. Are these all the messages same or different? Can I say HTTP message is same as a database message? No, right? It has some need to, such as HTTPS is some need to structure and database has need to structure. Then MuleSoft has capability to understand and process all these kinds of messages. That's right. That's right. Right? So right. Then how the MuleSoft is designed, how it is designed to understand and process all these kinds of messages. There is a component inside MuleSoft we're going to develop. That component is called a flow. Flow is a basic building block of MuleSoft. A flow is a component that receives a message from external world, like different kinds of sources. Yeah, and process the message and it replaces back to that component or any other component. So flow is a basic structure. Like any software component. What will do it? It take the input and process and use our output, right? Any software component. Yeah, right. Similarly, MuleSoft also takes the input, process it and use the output. In similar fundamental thing, the flow is the guy who takes the input, process it and sends the output. So you need to understand this basic building block of flow. So you will go into different kinds of flows as part of your MuleSoft journey. Then you need to understand about the fundamental of flow. What is the flow? What is current contents? The flow contains three important parts. The first one is the source. It's placed for the source. And this is the process. And one more section is called error handling section. 3 sections. It contains 3 sections. One is the source section, process section, and error handling section. So in MuleSoft there is some requirement. You need to receive message from HTTP client. And you need to store that message to database. You got such requirement. Your manager asks you, our client will send a message and you need to store that message to database. That is a business requirement you need to do, okay? Alright, so let me go back to my slide once. Sec. So this is business requirement from the postman. I'm sending this data. This is a record of one employee. And your requirement. You need to store this information to database table. Okay, right? So here I'm showing this is a flow. This is a diagram of flow. If you see there is some partition, you are seeing, right, some dashed line, dotted line over here. Yeah, so this partition, the first thing is a source. This area, this place is source. Yeah, and after partition, this area is called processing area. Okay, and down you can see error handling area. Okay, this is called error handling section. It's 3 sections. And you will ask, okay, boss, from where we are getting messages? Your boss told, okay, We are getting messages from the HTTP application. Then what you do? You will configure HTTP in the source. The listener, yeah. Okay, because you are getting messages from HTTP client. That's right. But in some case, you will get messages from one database and you need to put the same message to a different database. In that case, instead of HTTP listener, you put the database listener. If it is, the listener will be database. Database in case, yeah. In case, source is also database and target is also database. In that case, the listener is the database, right? In some case, your boss told, okay, there is some file from FTP server. Get the file and store the information inside the file to database. In that case, the source is you put FTP server, FTP listener, not an HTTP listener. I know. So Ganesh, yeah. Even though if it's FTP or the database or HTTP, we will still call a listener, isn't it? Exactly. Listener is a guy who is listening the information. Therefore, you call a listener. So if it's FTP, we don't call something else. Still listener, but behind the scene it could be FTP. So the thing is the inbound part. The inbound part means we are receiving message from the FTP database HTTP. The inbound. We call it listener. Because we're listening the messages. And there is some outbound component means that is giving back the messages to that end systems, like we may push the information to HTTP or we may insert the information to database. Those different connectors are there. Those are outbound. Those we can't call as listeners. Yeah, but outbound, the receivers are called listeners. Got it. So if you see there is some HTTP, this is called. This guy takes the messages from external. This is therefore is called listener. If you see an HTTP, see the request is, that is not listener. The request means it will push message through some other HTTP system. We will send messages from the mole. We send the message to other HTTP system. So therefore called, this is an outbound call. Listener is inbound. Request is outbound. Right. In similar way, we have the components. Those can receive messages from external world and they can send the message external. The two different components are available. So those components, those we are receivers, those are listeners. Got it? So now, in this scenario, one moment. So, if you observe the flow, the source HTTP. This is the source. And the process. We will receive this message from HTTP and we convert that message in a way that the base understands using the transform message component. Okay, right now I'm saying at high level, we're going forward to see what is transform message, how we will transform that things. Now, after transforming, we are inserting the message to database. Right. So this is called processing. Transforming and inserting is called processing. This is called process section, processing section. And while transforming, you write a query. Some bad syntax inside. Some insert query contains some bad syntax. Some field name is not proper. Then you will get some error right. Okay. To handle that error, you get an error handling section. Here we will see, we send back to information back to client sender page. Whatever the query is wrong, you need to write to correct part of the query. So that thing is sent back to client who called that. Maybe that information will log to logger also. So this contains a handling section, right? Yeah, so this is a basic link block. You receive the message, you process the message, and by processing you got any error. You manage that. So this is the flow. Any doubt to this point, Adan? What do you think? I really impressed. I really liked how you simplify. Thank you. How you explain very well. Second point, this is the flow, if you understand. We will move to the second point. Then how the message is not processed. So, as a Mule is a broker, it is receiving different kinds of messages. Go back one here. So, Ganesh, 1 second. Yeah. All the brokers, the broker section you mentioned that gets the inputs and listens to the message. Use that flow to process it and then creates output or, including error handling and everything. Yeah, so is that like ESP or ESPs all? It's not right. It is a kind of component inside ESP. The ESP is what? What is the ESP? It is a message broker itself. ESP is also, they call it something service bus. Service bus. Yeah. Service bus means the ESP is a kind of connectivity between applications. That is called a bus. Oh, so the flow is work as a bus between one application to some other application, right? The message will flow through the bus. Yeah, flow through the flow. Right. So from the source, the message reaches the flow, and from the flow, it reaches the target. So it's acting as a bus, right? Yeah. So therefore, it's called a bus. It's part of the bus only. Part of the means the entire ESP not only contain one flow, it contain multiple flows. Okay. So we can say that one single flow is an ESP. An ESP contain multiple flows. Got it? Got. Now, if you see my current slide, see here even source. These are different kinds of sources like HTTP, JMS, SMTP. From mail also we can get the message FTP database. And see, these guys are the components from the new land. They will understand the messages. So, with the message coming from HTTP, I will put HTTP listener in front. So, assume like a business scenario. You have a large business, right? And you have clients like German client and you have a Spanish client. You have Portuguese client, right? But your employees can understand only English. Okay. Your staff understands only English and your business got grown up and different kinds of come. Now, this is your business and there is a guy working for you. These guys understand only English. He doesn't understand any kind of other Spanish, German language. So tomorrow a new client come with a new language. So do you ask your staff to understand that language? Right. Yeah, so he has a new language, right? Yeah, a new language. So how do you manage your business? Because your staff understand only English language, only English. Yeah. They won't understand different kinds of languages. But your business has grown up and you are getting different clients. So I need a translator, right? Yeah, exactly. You would just put in one translator and this guy understands the German and this guy explains in your English, right? This is the best business model, right? Yeah, so you can't ask your employees to learn different kinds of languages. They need to focus on their work. They don't focus on different. What language they need to learn, right? That's right. Similarly, you have two different components in Ubisoft. One component responsible to talking to other systems. This is only responsibility. This guy won't process anything. This guy won't work right. What is responsibility? Only understand the incoming message and translate that message to the guys who work in a way that they understand. Yeah, that is the responsibility of this guy. And those guys are working on the message. They won't bother how to connect to that system, how to talk to the end client, what we do. They won't bother about that. They only work on the message. Got it? The similar kind of thing. If you want to talk to different kinds of end systems, if you want to deal with different kinds of clients, what you do, you will engage different kinds of people. One set of people talking to the end systems or end clients and getting the input from, and they will transforming the way the staff understands. Okay, once this staff initially their work, they will do output English. English output to your translator or your connector. And this again transforms to the guy. For example, we get the information, we get message in German, right? So the German work order takes this translator and it transforms to English and explain to your staff. Your staff work on that requirement. And they will give the output to your translator. Your translator again transform that work to German way and understand to German language. So this is way right. In similar way, if message comes from HTTP client, assume now comes with technical way. If message from HTTP client, yeah. So HTTP client will send HTTP message. Okay. So you will engage HTTP listener. So that guy able to understand HTTP message. That's right. You will have HTTP listener, though you can engage that listener. And your staff can't understand HTTP message. And what kind of message the event processes understand? A new term is called event processes. One term is event source. I'm sorry, I'm trying to explain this thing. Event source and event processes. The two major components in the new flow. Event source is a guy's listener, nothing but listener. Okay, listener or event source. What does you? You need to understand different kinds of your terminology because the means of the blogs or articles and everything explaining this kind of terminology, event source and event processes. Event source is called listener or inbound, whatever right its receiver. Receiver or inbound or event source or listener, whatever. So this guy is called event source and event processors are. They will work on the message in this example. Whatever I explained here, right? I explained here what is event source is. This listener is event source, right? Getting message next time on. What are the event processors? These two kind things. Transfer message and select message. Insert, actually not select insert. These two are event processors. Oh, they're working in the message, right? So similar, This event processors cannot understand the incoming message. They will understand only one kind of message, that English message. The English is equal to meal event. How to process? They only know how to process message. They don't know exactly. Yep. What type of message it is and what what contain. So the common format is called a meal event. They can understand only meal event. Meal event. Then whose responsibility to get the incoming message and convert to meal event? The listener. Listener? I think that's the question I had. Actually, I'm glad. Excellent. Excellent. You read my mind. So not only in listen is the message. I mean for some of the HTTP. One knows how to listen the HTTP message, but also it also converts to meal event. Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. You understand it. And then those guys know how to process meal events. Yes, that's the catch over here. This is a foremost, very important fundamental. Most people understand this. Please understand, your use of journey is very smooth. The point is the listener is a guy, is only not only understand the incoming message, but also builds the meal event and handovers that meal event to the processors. Right. So that is very important point in the meal fundamentals. That point you need to understand. We see demo also. This part we see demo also, then it's clear, yeah. So it's really good. So to take, let's do one more step. Yeah, sure. What is when we're saying that it converts to the meal events? We're talking about the JSON or XML or some other. That's what we're saying, right? In high level. Yeah. We are very close. We will talk about that one. Okay. Now, if you understand this, slide right when the message coming from HTTP. Message structure is always same. Every message structure is always same, but they're different. Means message coming to two parts. One is header and payload. Right. So the payload is a part where it contains the core business message. That's right. Right, like if I'm sending Excel from my postman. So whatever XML I'm sending, that will travel inside the payload area. And the header is give information about the payload. Means in what way it is going. It will be XML format. And if you are sending any security credentials, then that security things will go inside the header. Header will help the payload, but payload is a core business message. Yeah, right. So every message structure seems same. But to understand that message, you need to have a different kinds of user at the mule end that knows how to process the HTTP. One that knows how to process the GMS. So I understand you saying that. So the standard is for the message. It contains header and payload. But the header HTTP client and the header in a SMTP client are different. Correct, exactly. But that listener knows how to. They are experts how to. Listen and process to each of these clients. And that's really good. That specific listener know how to understand that kind of message. Yeah. Event source. So it looks to me everything all right. So the first two HTTP and GMS client. You have a listener and event source, while the rest of each one is different. Yeah, correct. We don't call them listeners. We call them. They given a different name based on the business context. CFTP client means. This is called an FTP, actually FTP server, from the FTP server. When you want to read the message. Sorry, files from HTTP server means. Whenever a new file is added to FTP server or whenever an existing file updated in the FTP server, then only we want to read that file. Okay, FTP server has 100 files. We don't want to read 100 files every time. Yeah, only new ones. Right. Only newly added file you want to read or any existing file if updated, that file you want to read. Therefore, it is a new or updated file. Yeah, on database. Database contains 100 rows. First time it reads 100 rows and it processes it. Next time it won't read the 100 rows. On table row, if anybody adds the new record to database, then it want to read that new record. Yeah. Okay, therefore, name is on table row. Got it? Got it. Where the other one is? They listen for any incoming message. Correct. Well, this one is the, the Reddit and they know the status of those. For example, the database where the last record was. Yeah, and when there's a new record, then that's when they will read. Correct. So, and what this listeners will do is this listeners will build a new limit. Right. So they take this message. Listeners take this message, a header and tailor message, and it will build the new limit. If the message comes from database, it receives this message, database message, and builds the new limit. Then why they are building new limit? What's the reason they're building new limit? They're constructing. So yeah, so that the processor understands. That's what the processor understand is how to process a new limit. Process understand only new limit. They don't understand HTTP SMTP. No, they won't bother about that end message. That's right, they won't understand. So those guys are like translators, right? Like you were saying, example of a language. In some way you can remember like that. Excellent. And we can then. Now we need to understand how this new limit is built based on this input. That is also very important. I will combine this one. Let's see. See, as you see the script request. New limit contains 3 parts. Let me show the new limit. It contains 3 parts. First part is attributes, payload and variables. So this new limit will flow from processor to processor inside your new flow. This new limit will flow from processor to processor because here in the new I have 2 processors, right? The first guy the user prepares a new limit and handovers that new limit to the transfer message. And transfer message will process that new limit and the processor to new limit sent to the second. Select this component. That's right. So new limit will flow from processor to processor. That thing. That's one of the second point you need to remember, right? And what is a new limit? What is the? It contains the three components: attributes, payload, variables. So how the attributes, payload and variables are built from the incoming request. So here what happens is whatever header things will go to the attributes section. Or the header is the attributes. Yes. So what user will do? It takes the header from HTTP request or an incoming request and put that header section to the attributes section in the no limit. Copies the headers to attributes. And the data section, data payload, that copy to the payload section. And initially variables are empty. Initially, once when the user converts, that point variables are empty. But going forward, when processing the message, we can add the new variables that we'll discuss tomorrow. Tomorrow means in the next session, we'll discuss about the variables that I don't want to. Yeah, I would love to have one tomorrow to continue this. We'll talk about it, your availability after the end of the session. This one I would demonstrate and can you know? And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.